Less than 1% of screens worldwide, nearly 4% of all the money spent at movie theaters globally on a single opening weekend, those same screens, fewer than 800 of them, can capture more than a quarter of a film's entire domestic gross. Not over its run, opening weekend. IMAX doesn't make movies, it doesn't write scripts, hire directors, or spend $200 million hoping audiences show up. And in 2025, it pulled in $1.28 billion in box office, more than Paramount's entire global release slate, and neck with Sony's. Right now, two of the biggest films of 2026 are scheduled to open on the same day, December 18th. Dune Part 3 and Avengers Doomsday, head-to-head. Warner Brothers has the IMAX screens locked for 3 weeks. Disney doesn't get a single US IMAX screen for Avengers opening weekend. Disney chose that date knowing the screens were gone. That choice, made months in advance, will cost one of the most valuable franchises in cinema history hundreds of millions of dollars. So the question is, how did a company with fewer screens than there are Starbucks locations in North America become the single most important piece of infrastructure in Hollywood? There are roughly 40,000 commercial movie screens in North America. IMAX has about 450 of them. That's a little over 1% globally across 91 countries. IMAX operates around 1,800 commercial screens out of a market that stretches past 100,000 auditoriums, still under 2%. In 2025, the network generated $1.28 billion in box office. The entire global film market was roughly $33.5 billion. IMAX's share 3.8%. That's nearly 4 times what you'd expect from its screen count just in raw average terms. But averages are the worst way to understand this. What really matters is what happens on opening weekend for a specific type of film. When a movie is shot using IMAX cameras, the Film for IMAX designation and IMAX gives it an exclusive window. Those 1,800 screens don't capture 4% of the domestic gross. They capture 20 to 27%. Think about what that means. 1% of screens, a quarter of the money. On the opening weekend of Dune Part 2, IMAX took 23% of the domestic gross, $18.5 million out of $82.5 million, just in 3 days, just in North America. By the end of its run, those 1,800 screens had generated $143 to $145 million of Dune Part 2's $715 million worldwide total. About 20% of the entire film's gross came from fewer than 2% of the screens it played on. This isn't an accident, it's a system. And understanding why it works the way it does requires understanding something most audiences never think about. IMAX is not a theater chain. It's a technology company that charges everyone else to use what it built. IMAX owns the cameras, the remastering process, the projection systems, and the sound architecture. It installs equipment into theaters that other companies own and operate. Then it takes a cut. Here's roughly how the cut works. When a studio releases a film through IMAX theaters, IMAX earns approximately 11% of the box office generated on those screens, a distribution and content fee for mastering and delivering the film in IMAX format. Simultaneously, the theater operator running the IMAX screen pays IMAX approximately 7% of that same box office, a technology rental fee for using the projection and sound system. Stack those together, and IMAX is collecting roughly 18 cents of every dollar its screens generate from 2 different parties at once, without producing a single frame of the film. There are no production budgets, no marketing costs, no development deals, no slate risk. IMAX does not bet on any individual film succeeding. It bets that premium cinema, as a format, will keep generating demand. And for now, it is right. The corporate numbers reflect this. In 2025, IMAX Corp posted $410 million in company revenue, net income of $45.5 million, an adjusted EBITDA margin of 45%. That margin is higher than most studio operations, and it came without touching a single screenplay. Now compare that to the studios. In 2025, Sony Pictures generated $1.47 billion in global box office. Paramount generated $1.42 billion. IMAX's network box office, $1.28 billion, was nearly identical to both, within rounding distance. but Sony and Paramount each released dozens of films to get there. They employed thousands of people. They spent hundreds of millions on productions. Some worked, some didn't. IMAX released nothing. It just held the toll booth. If you want a company in the streaming and theatrical landscape right now, that is one of the most structurally unusual positions in the entire entertainment industry. And it exists because of a decision IMAX made decades ago to not just build bigger screens, but to build the cameras that shoot for them. If you follow this channel, you know we track the economics behind entertainment decisions that look like creative ones. Consider subscribing if you haven't, because what's coming in the next 2 sections is where this story gets interesting. The Filmed for IMAX program is technically simple and commercially enormous. IMAX manufactures a proprietary film camera, the 1570mm, roughly 54 pounds, one of only 20 to 30 in existence. It's heavy, loud, and produces a frame with 40% more visible image area than any standard film format. Then there's the digital version, IMAX certified ARRI Alexa cameras. More practical on set, but producing the same expanded aspect ratio and qualifying for the same designation. Directors who shoot with these cameras get something back, a contractual exclusive IMAX window. Their film runs on those 1,800 screens without a competitor in the format for 2 to 4 weeks. No other studio's blockbusters get those screens for the duration of the exclusive. In practice, during the most important revenue period of a film's life, the director who used IMAX cameras owns the format. Christopher Nolan has understood this longer than anyone. He started putting IMAX cameras into his productions with The Dark Knight in 2008. About 28 minutes of IMAX footage in that film. By Interstellar, it was 60+ minutes. Dunkirk, 75%. Oppenheimer entirely shot on IMAX cameras, including the first black and white film ever shot 100% on IMAX film cameras. July 17th to August 14th. Tickets for opening night sold out more than a year in advance. IMAX 70mm tickets for The Odyssey have appeared on eBay for over $900. This is the system revealing itself. Nolan committed fully to the format, and the format gave him a monopoly on premium cinema for an entire month. But 2023, Mission Impossible got roughly 1 week of IMAX. Then Oppenheimer took everything. Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning became one of the most expensive commercial disappointments of 2023. It opened to $56 million domestically against a production budget of around $290 million. The IMAX loss didn't cause that outcome alone, but it removed the opening weekend revenue cushion a film of that scale depends on. Directors noticed. The camera program isn't an artistic choice. It's the entry fee for guaranteed infrastructure access during the weeks that determine whether a film is a success or a write-down. Which brings us to December 18th, 2026. 2 studios, 1 date, one of them with IMAX screens, one without. Dune Part 3 is the 3rd film Denis Villeneuve shot on IMAX certified cameras. It has a 3-week exclusive on all US IMAX screens starting on opening day. The contractual window was secured before Avengers Doomsday ever announced December 18th as its release date. When Disney put Doomsday on that date, the IMAX screens were already gone. Avengers Doomsday will not appear on a single domestic IMAX screen for the first 3 weeks of its release. It gets IMAX in select international markets only. Now consider what that means in revenue terms. If Dune Part 3 follows Dune Part 2's pattern, and Villeneuve's IMAX relationship suggests it will, IMAX will account for roughly 20% of its total worldwide gross on projections of around $720 million total. That's potentially $140 to $145 million from IMAX alone, and the majority of that money comes in the first 3 weeks. For Avengers Doomsday, the IMAX contribution drops to something closer to 7%, the normal range for a superhero film without an IMAX exclusivity window and without being shot on IMAX cameras. The franchise's built-in audience carries it regardless, but the premium format revenue that should have padded those opening weekend numbers isn't there. What's the dollar cost? Analysts at Synalytic estimated Doomsday's domestic projected gross at around $618 million. Apply the difference between a 20% IMAX contribution and a 7% one, and you're looking at $80 to $100 million in missing revenue, concentrated in the opening weeks when premium pricing and demand are highest. Disney didn't lose that money to Dune. Disney lost that money to the system it either misread or underestimated. Warner Brothers didn't beat Disney in a creative competition, they beat them in a logistics one. By locking the date with IMAX before Disney got there, by working with a director who'd been building an IMAX relationship since the first film, and by understanding that in 2026, IMAX exclusivity on a tentpole isn't a nice addition to a release strategy, it is the release strategy. And here's the detail that crystallizes the whole thing. Warner Brothers will not move Dune Part 3 to avoid the collision. Not because of studio pride, because moving the date means losing the IMAX exclusive. The screens are the leverage, and giving up the leverage is more costly than any box office split with Avengers could ever be. IMAX tickets for Dune Part 3 are already selling on the secondary market for close to $1,000 for opening weekend for a film that hasn't released yet. That's how much people believe those 1,800 screens matter. A few years ago, the dominant theory about movie theaters was that streaming had ended them. HBO Max, Netflix, Disney+. The platforms would absorb the audience and the theatrical window would compress towards nothing. What happened instead is stranger and more durable. The small segment of cinema didn't just survive streaming, it extracted more revenue per seat, per screen, and per opening weekend than any point in the industry's history. It did it by becoming the format that streaming cannot replicate, by making scarcity its core product. There are 1,796 commercial IMAX screens. There will not be 10,000 of them. Scarcity is not a bug. It's the entire mechanism. When a format is genuinely rare and genuinely better, the people who control access to it control outcomes. IMAX doesn't make films, it taxes them. Studios pay to master their films in the IMAX format. Theater operators pay to run IMAX equipment. Audiences pay more per ticket. And directors, who want guaranteed infrastructure during the weeks their film lives or dies, adopt the cameras and build their creative process around a technology they don't own. The tax is now so large that it determines which films succeed. Not which films are better, which films succeed. A movie with the IMAX exclusive enters its opening weekend with a structural revenue advantage that no amount of marketing spend can replicate from the outside. And a movie without it, even a Marvel film, even with decades of franchise equity, enters the same weekend already short. The studios that understood this earliest restructured their release calendars, cultivated director relationships with IMAX years in advance, and treated the 1,800 screen network as the most valuable real estate in Hollywood. The ones that didn't are finding out what it costs to learn late. That's the IMAX business model. Not a theater chain, not a content company. A toll road built over 40 years, running through the middle of every major film opening in the world. And the only way around it is to pay. If that framing, IMAX as the proof case that theaters didn't die, they transformed, raises a question about how the rest of the cinema industry rebuilt itself around the same logic. That video is on screen right now. Movie theaters didn't beat streaming, they copied it. It is the full story of how theaters rebuilt their model around premium experiences, loyalty programs, and the kinds of events that streaming can't replicate. IMAX is the clearest proof. The rest of the industry is the broader answer. That video is on screen.